Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'd like to call the board meeting November 19th, 2024 to order at 7:03 at the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. And we will start out with our obligatory roll call.
What am I doing? Thank you, Director Bernstein,
Present.
Director Bloom,
Here.
Director Jones,
Here.
Director Crowley, President, Director Solano.
Here. All right, and we'll do pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then we did have a closed session. There are no reportable actions from our closed session. So I will next open it to any public comments. Seeing no public, we don't have any public comments, so we'll go right on to the report of the chief.
Thank you, Director Bloom, members of the board, and our staff that's here, and anyone that's joined us. Happy to share with you Fire Chief's report for this month. Quick update, it's in your packet on the Fire Station 1 update. I have, there's not a lot that has gone on in between our last meeting and now, but we should have some updates related to some feedback that we're gonna get from the city of Menlo Park. We'll share that with the Finance Committee at the December meeting and then with the board. I will say, my apologies.
Facilities committee.
Oh, sorry, I said finance. One of those F committees.
Whoa.
Like that.
We're an F committee
Yeah. I will share one thing that I meant to include in that Fire Station 1 update, and it was kind of after a conversation at the last board meeting with Director Bernstein, was just what exactly has been approved. So I have, this language will show up in the next Fire Station 1 update at the December meeting and will be in the future ones for the sake of leaving good footprints, but it is this. The first sentence should say this: the board of directors approved the Station 1 project at the June 11th, 2024 board meeting, which included the scope as listed below, as well as giving direction to staff to begin work directive number 2 for the schematic design and design development services in the amount of $1,059,600. So that just was back to Director Bernstein's comment about, no, the board didn't approve the whole thing at the June 1st meeting, just a certain amount within that scope, then that will be documented in the next one. My apologies for it not being in there on this one.
Chief, could I ask that you send Menlo Park's comments to all the board members?
Sure. Absolutely. Moving on, just an update with recruitment and promotions. It's just recruitment. The administrative specialist position that's going to support the executive staff just closed. We have 61 candidates, so great. We're gonna filter that down and then do some in-person interviews and hopefully have somebody selected by the first of the year. The mechanic opening just was posted this week, so looking forward to getting a list of qualified candidates for that. Other items to update on the community engagement unit. Busy month, very productive month. First of all, and this kind of just, our volunteer coordinator, community engagement is involved with a lot of the things that go on. They, along with the department, hosted a very successful pancake breakfast. We raised almost $10,000 that went to the Elisa Ann Roosh Burn Foundation and served around 750 people. Others there say there were more, but I think they had a clicker, so that's what the number is, plus or minus. Station 4 also hosted a very successful haunted house for those that went by, with about 1,700 participants, including dogs and people, I believe.
That was almost triple the amount of people we had last year.
It was very busy, it's great, you talk about connecting with the community. The pictures were awesome. Kudos to Captain Hendricks and his group for putting that on. So I'm sure next year will be even different. Community classes taught. We taught an ICS class, that's Institute Command System class. for the Ravenswood Family Health Clinic, for their staff. We did a Red Cross Ready Emergency Prep class that was taught in Spanish to about 50 community members in North Fair Oaks. That was done in partnership with Climate Resilient Communities. We again did our monthly CPR, Stop the Bleed, and Red Cross Ready classes. Also started doing a hands-only CPR for volunteers at Little House. And for the Meals on Wheels folks that work out of there, that's great. And then at least those emergency prep class was taught in Spanish in Bellhaven. On the CERT side of things, our latest CERT Academy finished up and we had 18 people that were graduated. And I would imagine, though it's not on here, sworn in as disaster service workers. We also ran a firefighter rehab at the rescue site when we had the College of San Mateo out there doing their live fire training. And we opened it up, so it wasn't just members of our CERT team, but we also opened it up to volunteers that went through the firefighter rehab class. And those were from communities of San Bruno, Central County, Kings Mountain, and La Honda CERT folks that all participated. That's great. And they also hosted a booth at the City of Menlo Park's Halloween Hoopla event with about 1,000 people attending the event. Good things going on with the community engagement unit. Strategic plan update. We have a draft that is complete. We met along with you the week of October 21st through 24th, 3 sessions we had there. AP Triton has presented us with a draft. We're giving some input back. We also have a special meeting with the board on Tuesday, December 10th, starting at 6 o'clock. Dan Peterson, our facilitator, will be here. We'll be sharing with you in advance that draft document too, so we can have a conversation about where we go from there. So looking forward to the board continuing to input on that. This next thing, the fire response analysis report, there's one included in this month. This ties in nicely with a conversation about the strategic plan. Because one of the draft initiatives right now is meeting with the board and coming up with some new metrics that everybody's on the same page on. So that will be part of the strategic planning process and developing metrics that the board would like to measure along with us. Current deployments, we don't, I'm going to say recent deployments. Fortunately, the rain has come, but we did probably about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, deploy resources to Mountain Fire down in my old dirt in Ventura County. It was interesting. We had pre-positioned resources here in San Mateo County for the red flag warnings. Everyone remembers we had low humidity and high winds. Those resources, 2 strike teams up here were deployed pretty quickly on that same day that the fire started down to Southern California. Yeah, our crews down there, we're down there for a number of days, assisting initially with structural protection and then mop up. So pretty devastating, quick moving fire down there. Just to follow up, the Cal Chiefs Conference was in October down in Costa Mesa. I sat and presented on a panel related to statewide reimbursements for local government. Good, well-attended class. Veterans Lunch on Friday, November 8th. I attended with Director Crawley at the West End in Millbrae. Awesome event. There's a World War II vets there. Still with a little bit of, yeah, they were kind of saucy and had really great attitudes. Really neat event honoring the, our folks that had served their country. So on that same day afterwards, I swung by, we were having the final day of our Menlo Park Fire District Wellness Fair. That was here at Station 1. We rotated all of our crews to really try to introduce them to some of the new programs we have. The board was generous in supporting new wellness initiatives this year, including access to therapists who specialize in trauma training. So there was a therapist there that introduced them to some of the concepts. We talked about some of the list of therapists that we already have. We had one of our comfort dogs there. We had a workers' comp specialist there, and I'm trying to remember the one other booth that was there. not ringing a bell with me, but great event. And I said, oh, and then I think they came in here and did some breathing and yoga techniques. So I skipped that. I'm still in my fancy suit from the Veterans Day, so I didn't do the yoga. Pancake breakfast I already talked about. Couple other things before I get to the outstanding staff reports. The 2700 Middlefield fire cause report. We're expecting to be able to release it at the beginning of December. We'll coordinate, John and I will make sure we coordinate with the board so you get a first look at it before we release it. And I just wanted to talk briefly, for those that may have seen it, the 80 Willow project is now considered a complete application with the city of Menlo Park. And I just wanted to share, that doesn't mean a whole lot, except they submitted all of their elements to the city of Menlo Park. We still haven't weighed in on the fire safety side of things. I've been talking with John about coming to the board and presenting some kind of timeline so you all have an understanding of what our role is, when we'll touch the plans, when we'll see them, what inputs, or what areas we have input into. And then also separately from fire code interpretations, the ability that we have through the CEQA process to talk about some of the impacts to the fire district and mitigations, proposed mitigations. So that's like, when we talk about traffic, right? It's probably one of our biggest issues that we're going to talk about. So anyway, that is pretty up and visible. It may be in the paper, but I just wanted to share with you that we're on top of it. We'll come back to the board probably at the December meeting and at least share kind of a timeline of when we expect that will be involved in the process.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There's the project itself on a long-term basis, but there's also the construction time and what happens during construction and so forth. Do you get involved in that?
That is a question that, I know that, I don't know, do you go and do inspections during the construction?
Yeah, we're involved all the way from the planning till occupancy. So with construction, we have to make sure all the infrastructure is in place for fire protection and access. And then during construction, whatever systems they're installing that we are responsible for with permits. So we are there the entire way.
And then finally, my outstanding staff reports, we still have the electrification of fire service vehicles on there, and then a new one I added since our last meeting is an internal controls policy. One was made through the process, sponsored by Director Corrali. What you're not seeing on there is the ISO staff report, since it's on today's agenda. And that concludes my fire chief report.
Questions? Chief, one, on your fire response analysis report, what is the name of the device that changes the traffic signals from red to green?
Traffic preemption device.
Opticom.
Opticom?
Opticom.
How do you spell it?
OPTICOM.
OP, what?
OPTICOM.
You get it right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Clarification. Chief, I know, and looking at the, on page 5 of the analysis report, and you may have talked about this last meeting, but what does good intent, when there's a service call and it's good intent, it seems like there's a lot of good intent calls that are out there for the 1200.
I know, and I have an email that's in, so I will just resend out that email that has all the explanations. But oftentimes it would be a call where, somebody may see steam, and we end up on scene and it was, we canceled because it was just steam, not a fire. Or it might also be when we are called to the scene, somebody's already self-transported. Right, so, but I will also resend out that email with all of the descriptions and definitions.
Send that over. Have you sent it? Oh, I'll probably need to go back.
I'll send it to you so you don't have to dig through your.
Anybody else? All right, we'll close the discussion on the chief's report. And we will go to the consent calendar, which we have 4 items on today's consent calendar. The minutes, the treasurer's report, the supplemental grant for the FEMA team, and I know that John's here if there's questions on that. And the resolution approving the master pay schedule for all district employees. Does anybody want to remove anything from the consent calendar? Okay, do we have a
I'll
motion
move.
to approve?
I'll
the
move to approve this consent calendar.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. We didn't have anybody pull anything, so I suspect there's no discussion either. And so we can vote on it, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. The unanimous approval of the consent calendar. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Moving on to the regular agenda item, the next one is something that the finance committee did take a look at. But it's to accept the fiscal 24-25 property tax revenue estimates. And I suspect that's why Elaine is hanging out here.
Yeah, so, good evening, directors, good evening, everyone. So, this, short staff report is basically just to give the board an idea of, what our property tax revenue, would be for this fiscal year. So this primarily gives us an analysis of whether or not we would want to change or revise our revenue budget. Based on, the overall information we have, we are not revising, our revenue budget that we adopted last June, which is about $82 million. So for the estimates, again, the estimates are driven primarily from the levy lever that we receive from the County of San Mateo every October. So the estimates include, the secured, unsecured, HOPPR, unitary tax, and ERAP shift. So all the numbers that you see on the table are actually based on the levy letter that was provided to us, by the county. As far as SB 813, as you can see, for SB 813, we did not change, our estimate on that because we don't have any additional information from what we have when we last adopted the budget. And lastly, for the ERAP rebate and RDA distributions, these are we change, or we revise, the estimates based on the current information that we have, plus the historical distribution numbers and percentages that we gathered for the past 5 years. So overall, our estimates for our property tax is $85.6 million, which is about $2.6 million, above, our revenue adopted budget. That's it for that report, unless there are any questions.
There's not a whole lot to say, except it's good news, right?
Anybody have any questions on the staff report on that?
Make sure I understand, I'm sorry, I was just based on what Virginia said. I mean, it's not terrible news, but it's not good news, is it? I mean,
Well, I mean,
we're
it's
worse
for
off.
up, I know, but it's.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't
No,
misunderstanding.
no, it was just that we're up, I guess, is probably the 3.1% increase.
No, it's a decrease. Right?
Oh, it's an increase.
Increase,
Increase.
$2.6 million.
Okay, so then whose estimate are we talking about here? Is that that's the county's estimate, right?
The estimates for the property tax categories there are from the county, and then the rest are actually internal estimates from.
For our budget.
Okay, I was reversing those. I see. So what the county is telling us is 2.5 million higher than what we budgeted.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I was reading it wrong, so.
Don't worry, I think any increase is pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Do we need a motion to?
If I could just share as a note, I mean, this is, yeah, we've changed a little bit with
I said
how
no.
we've, it's all right. I know I'm gonna cause the meeting to go longer, but I just wanted to acknowledge that the work of our fiscal staff, especially Elaine, in aligning with the board's desire for us to be a little bit more accurate in our predictions. And you'll see in prior things, we were off by over $10 million. And so we were very conservative in our adjustments, and we're much closer. The recommendation is to not make a budget change because we're pretty close to the mark, and we'll deal with that when we close out the books at the end of the year, but, yeah, it's good news in that respect, that our budget estimates are much closer to, you know, what we believe to be actuals too.
Yes. I was one of the people that complained about us being way off, and I'm very happy to see this, so this is what I think we should be doing, and, the fact that it's even better than we thought it was gonna be is good news, as Virginia said, but, thank you, I think it's right for us to have a realistic budget rather than kind of undershoot by 10 million, which just sounds so cavalier. Okay,
Okay, so there's some confusion whether we need a motion or not.
It's fine if it's a consensus that the board accepts the report. Last year we had a motion. I don't care either way, it's fine.
Let's, for good housekeeping, do a motion
I'll
to
move
accept it.
to accept the fiscal year 2024-25 property tax revenue and estimates.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay, unanimous approval. All right, thank you. And next up is the chief's report and discussion, ISO. This is obviously probably the main topic of tonight's meeting.
It is, thank you, I will kind of tee it up, and John will be probably the primary presenter, conversationalist related to this. So this is, an item that was requested by the board, so we could take a look at our ISO rating from 2017 and compare it to 2023 to see how we did, where we can improve. I will point your direction to the very last page of the report that has attachment C with a table on it. You know, my guess is tonight, we probably won't have all the answers to your questions, and there'll probably be additional further direction for us to get a little more information. So like, yeah, this could be just the beginning of the conversation. I will share with you, yeah, this shows the ISO scores from 6 years ago and then last year, and then the change. Yeah, if it's the changes in the black are obviously positive improvements for us, the changes in red are negative. What I will point you to is it's broken out into basically 4 different sections. The emergency communications section, really it has to do with the Public Safety Communications Center. We have very little control. The change there was pretty minor from 1 year to the next, or from one report to the next. Fire department operations is really the area that we have control over from. You can see from 2017 to 2023, we had an increase in our total points of 5 points, which is, you know, almost 10 percentage points in that area. So that was good. We're still at 82.8% of the total points available. In order to get to an ISO 1 rating, you have to be 90%.
You have to have a score of 90.
90. So, you know, in each and every section, yeah, the first one, for the emergency communications, we're at 89.9, so close. 82.8 for the fire department one. The one that we really struggle with, where we really have very little control, is the water supply. It's the systems, it's the water purveyors, you know, and so that one you can see the score dropped by 6.2 points. We're just a little bit below 70% of the total available points in that, so that's a struggle for us. The last section there with community risk reduction, that we have control over for the most part. That's a good amount of what John has been doing in his Fire Prevention Bureau with our new community risk reduction officers. Our score went up a little bit there. The nice thing about that section there is, I don't know if that's the one, it's almost like bonus points, right? So the total of the score is 105.5. So the community risk reduction can actually give you, yeah, kind of a little extra. Yeah, so even if you're at 88 in all the other sections, if you get all your points there, it can push you up and over. 90. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to John and see let you do your thing, and we'll see what kind of questions the board has.
So I echo everything the chief just said. So from 2017 to 2023, as mentioned, with the increase in the score for the fire department score, that was a lot of actions that was taken from the previous score and with board direction and previous chief to see what we could do to initiate improvements in the fire department, and we saw those realized here. When it comes to water supply, obviously we did see a decrease, not sure why. There was such a big decrease, that is something that we need to figure out. And then again, with risk reduction, we did see that increase, which did help us. In the discussion, basically, it gives a good breakdown of how and why this takes place. This is a tool, it's not how insurance companies may rate, and of course, with the way California is these days, and insurance companies, they do use their own methods of how they are going to provide rates to individuals. And so I'm hoping this is clear on kind of what some of those expectations and stuff may be. When this ISO rating was given to us, it's usually done about once every 5 years. COVID delayed that, that's why there was a little bit longer in here. And then everything was done via email for this particular score because they were not coming on site and everything was virtual for them. So I never did get to meet them. It was just over email, and I think I had only a couple of phone calls. So trying to get clarification and scores and stuff, I will say it was a little challenging because there came a report. So I will try my best to answer any questions, but chances are based on those questions, I'm gonna have to see if I can actually contact them and see if I can obtain clarifications. But changing scores may or may not have an impact. From what I understand, changing from a 2 to a 1 most likely only impacts commercial properties for a little bit lower rate if the insurance companies choose to do so. But from what I understand on residential, it does not have an impact. But that may or may not be true since hearsay from other departments.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but the ISO, when they provide us with the most recent report, they don't reconcile it to the prior report and explain why the decrease or increase in score. They just
Correct. Yeah.
basically regrade you.
Yeah. Here's the new score, and there's no feedback on how they obtained that.
So their criteria may be changing as well, right? It may not just be the score, I assume they change their process.
It could be the rater.
Like start over again.
I do know that there's a couple of factors when it comes to the water departments that is challenging for the state of California with water conservation. Water departments now do not perform annual flows on their hydrants for water conservation, water quality. And that's one of the things that ISO wants to see. So when California specifically says no wasting water, so that right there is a discrepancy that they have when it comes to the water quality, and actually doing an annual inspection and test of all of those hydrants. Again, our water departments here don't have the staff, time, ability to do that, and there's no requirement from any authority for them to do so. So there's no initiative for the water companies to actually do anything to improve this score, other than us saying, hey, can you help us improve this score for the community? So that is one of the challenges when it comes to the water departments and trying to improve this score.
So let's just try to manage the discussion. We're gonna start with Robert, go to Virginia, go to Chuck, come back to Robin, and come back to me. So let Robert exhaust his question and move the next individual on the left. Well, you can, whatever questions you have.
Okay. Regarding the water supply, you mentioned about quality. Is it more of, does it focus on quality versus water pressure? And I know in install also, sometimes there's with the water, sometimes there's too much pressure, but water may have exploded over there.
So for ISO, their importance is based on the availability of water and
water
and
supply.
to be able to get it to the fire department, where for the water purveyor themselves, their whole driver, the only thing they need to answer to is water quality. is it drinkable?
Right.
And then needing a very minimal amount of water for fire supply, but even if they don't meet the minimum for a water volume for fire supply, then it's on the property owner to provide it. So it's not the water purveyor's responsibility per se. Their only requirement is water quality for consumption. That is the authority that they gotta answer to for the state. So, and the two water purveyors that we have that are small, they're so small that there's very little oversight on them. And, there's not a lot of drive to become something larger that would provide for larger scale, water provisions.
So does this apply, I assume this applies to the 3 cities and the county area that within the district? Is there a evaluation for each city separately? In terms of, how they may interplay or the scores may affect our overall score as a district?
So we have 5 water purveyors in our district. And the way ISO performed this test was for our entire fire district. So everybody impacts the other. We do have the availability, if we want to make a request, to have separate scores for each city if we wish. If we believe that there would be a change that would be beneficial. So some larger, like you look at like maybe Orange County or something, it might be beneficial for them to break it up so that they can provide better ISO scores for certain communities versus, something way rural. Where for us, I think we're still small enough that I don't think there would be any score changes. And you may not want to negatively impact some communities based on that decision, but we do have some flexibility from what I understand to request separate scorings for our cities if we want.
Because one of the supply system, so you guys lost 2.4 and 5.4, and then we lost also in the inspection and flow testing, 3.62. So the question is whether, I assume the flow testing that's a hydrant by hydrant, city by city kind of situation.
Yeah, so that inspection flow testing is literally flowing every hydrant every year and having a hands-on inspection. And again, all of our water purveyors will not do that. 1, because of manpower cost, and then 2, because of the wasting water. And they have to record and provide to the state all of the water that is lost, and could have penalties and fines, and so they do not want to do that here in California.
So that'll keep us in a pickle then.
It does.
So somewhere along the line, and I'm leave this along here for now, but at some point, I think in terms of identifying, if we can, those those water hydrants, wherever they are, wherever city they are, and then we need to try to figure out how to, if it's the city of East Palo Alto, if it's money, if it's whatever, we need to try to figure out how to help them get, improvement into their system, if that's one of the hang-ups, and that goes for any city, not just that big.
Is it also possible, just as long as we're on the water topic, because I had one question on that, is it possible for the district to pass an ordinance that says the water suppliers will do certain testing of hydrants? I'm not saying we should, I'm just curious if that is a lever or a tool that we have available to us.
I'd have to research it, but I doubt it, because I think the only ordinances that we can pass would be related to building construction.
Okay.
So we do, in our ordinance, we do change the state's water requirement for construction. So, because the state does reduce the amount of water available based on sprinklers. And since we have a history of lower water availability because of our small water purveyors, we actually made it more restrictive and did not allow as much reduction in that water supply because we've historically seen that. So that is the only thing that we have influence on, is that fire.
So could we put a requirement into that ordinance that for new permits to be issued, that hydrant within so many feet has to be tested within
We
prior 12 months?
do that. So they have to have what's called the current fire flow for new construction projects, so that's already.
Okay, thank you.
Robert, you,
You're good.
Go wait, Deborah.
I
No,
already,
no.
Robert just
Virginia.
asked my question, I just was wondering, based on the water supply and I guess the flow and the infrastructure, if it's broken down, I guess if the cities are, do we have any indication of where the weaknesses are? And not just the cities, but I mean North Fair Oaks and West Menlo, you know, the unincorporated areas too. But I think you kind of answered that, because we're looking at this from a district-wide perspective instead of breaking it down.
Yeah, and with the scores that with what we're seeing, it's not just the small water purveyors.
Yeah.
They have their own uniqueness, but I'm gonna call it a statewide item,
Yeah.
really, but I don't know how others get scored versus these.
Yeah. I think that's the water issue is gonna keep us at a 2. Or
Well,
pretty large
actually, if you
points.
look, even if we got all of the points for water, we're still at it.
We have it.
So
We
I don't know.
Much closer.
Yeah, it puts us closer, but it does not put us at a 1.
Yeah, that's, okay, that's, anyway, you actually answered my question, you answered Robert's question.
So again, related on the same water topic, just in answer to your answer to the question, have you looked at, say, like Redwood City versus Redwood City, San Carlos, and said, how are they getting scored in their ISO report for water, and is it comparable to what we're seeing?
I have not been able to see those scores.
So are these reports confidential to the,
As far as I know, they're not, they should be public, but I haven't seen them.
okay, thank you. Virginia, anything else?
No, that's it. I mean, my concern always been the water issue.
Chuck?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm a lot more frustrated than I'm sensing from around the table here. This sort of, woe is me, oh alas, what can we do? It's baloney. Mountain View is a ISO 1, how do they do it? Do they not waste water? I understand, maybe I'm wrong, but Redwood City is a ISO 1, how do they do it? Are they better than we are? I mean, are we just patting ourselves on the back for how good we are, but all the world sees us as a second-rate agency? Is that the reality we're dealing with here? I mean, I don't understand. I think we ought to commit to doing this. If it takes us, if the ISO wants us to do something that is outlawed by state law, then they have to find another way to measure it. And I think we should go to court to get them to do this. This is what we owe our residents. And to say that it doesn't affect residential insurance rate is not accurate. This does have some effect on residential insurance rates. The people who elected us are paying more because we're not firm enough about what's going on here. I think we need to commit to getting this done. About maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we talked about this. There was a commitment to do something. I mean, I think it's time to kick the butt of ISO, that's to say, oh, we're gonna do it over the telephone. How do you do it over the telephone? I don't even understand that. But I think we need a commitment to doing this, and if our staff can't do it, then I think we need to replace that staff and get a staff in here who can get it. Why is Mountain View better than we are? I don't get it. They're allowed to waste water. There's a special law in California that allows them to do it. I don't even know why I was looking at some fire-related magazine, but I saw there's even a machine that allows you to hook it up to the hydrant, so that when water comes in, you're not wasting water. It stores the water and then it gets reused and stuff. Why don't we get one of those things? It just seems to me that these other places have found ways to do it. And we ought to look from a competitive standpoint. Maybe we are just not as good an agency as Mountain View and Redwood City. I mean, maybe that's the reality. But I don't think we should be satisfied with this. I, as a board member, am not satisfied with it. I'm not clear here. When I look at these numbers and I see that we're off by about 20 points, I had trouble adding up these numbers and finding 20 negatives in here. If I look at the reds, I have trouble finding 20 negatives, so I haven't calculated
The
these.
the reds are just the deltas from 17 to 23.
Yeah,
They're not the
Oh,
numbers.
they're
or
not the
negatives.
negatives of the other stuff, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, the only way you can look at negatives is something like company personnel.
Yeah, I did
Where
look at,
where there's 15 available, we're only getting 9.
yeah, thank
So
you.
there's a 6-point delta. So I think the interesting column, to your point, would be what's our delta from what's available?
Right, I mean, John, you're
Because
kind of,
that's our negative delta, that's the points we're missing out on, because we could spend all day long on, oh, look over there, it's the water district. You know, the water district adds up to, 40 points, and we've definitely had a decline there. But on something like company personnel, I for one would like to understand how we're six points off the 15 available on something like that.
well, we're half of the norm, I did see that in the text.
Well, we're 9 now, we were 7.5 last
Okay,
time, so
But,
more, but we're still 6 points shy of the.
what's wrong with that,
Available
what's wrong with
points.
our personnel?
So to me, that's
Let me-
that's the interesting column, just as a point of reference for future, is to add a column to say what's, how many points off are we from the available score? Because that allows you
to benchmark,
allows you to focus to Director Bernstein's point of view, of somebody like Mountain View or somebody else. Yeah, there's other paths to get to an ISO 1 other than getting the water district to be better.
right.
That's not-
Hence the more than 20.
That's not a required thing, because, it's like you can still get there with some improvement in water district by acing other things.
Well, I think we need to be more aggressive with the other agencies. I'm talking about the cities that are approving development where there's not sufficient water or water pressure. I mean, this idea of the project on Willow Road that the chief talked about. I mean, where are they gonna get enough water to do that? Where are they gonna get enough water pressure to go up, what is it, 8 stories or something now? Who's gonna provide that? I mean, I don't know about this, but I mean, those are things that they just keep approving these things, and if it's housing, oh my goodness, let's put them up the people up 8 stories, it doesn't matter if they die up there because they don't have water to put out a fire, but let's just put up, at least they'll have housing when they die. I mean, I don't understand, we need to be more assertive and more common sense oriented about what we're doing here. In any case, I would like to see us really upset about this. We don't look very good. We don't look good, given our ISO rating with our neighboring agencies, and I think we just need to stop making excuses and say, we've got to get this up and we've got to do it in the next year or two. I know that they might not come out in the next year or two, but I think we should demand that they come out sooner rather than later.
We can certainly look into that and see if we are able to expedite them off schedule of their normal rotation. We can also dig into some of the things, like you said, company personnel. My guess is that's not attesting to the quality of our people, it's the number. So somebody like a city of San Francisco that has 4 people on an engine and 5 on a truck, they may very well get most of those points because of their staff and what they have. So we can dig into those areas and figure out what, some of those areas that have a lot of meat on the bone, like that 6 points is pretty significant. And then I will share, without naming specific areas, I know in talking to some fire chiefs, truly there's a good portion of the rating that really depends on the evaluator you get. And it's unfair, and it's subjective, and I don't know how you, do that, but I hear that through my private conversations with fire chiefs around that have ISO 1 ratings. And I hear that sometimes, they just say, we got an easy reviewer.
Well, let's go to court and deal with it. I mean, let's not be passive about it.
But we can look and see what's possible.
And that's what I think we need to do. We haven't.
Chief Johnson, I sense you had something to add to that.
Yeah, I was gonna add to, kind of along with what the chief was saying, that, for more points, staffing is one of those, but whatever it is that we do, to make a goal for those improvements, they aren't doing a snapshot of where you're at that day, they are looking at time, so it's usually like a 3-year window, so like training records, it's 3 years of training records, and so if you're gonna have increased staffing, you're gonna show, water testing and stuff, they're gonna be looking for 3 years of records that, hey, this is a practice that's continual, not, we just did this one-time shot so we can get a really good ISO score and then we back off again. So, so that's just one thing to be aware of, which is what we did. We were aware of what improvements we could make, and it shows with our improvements that we have control of. And so if we want to, look into improving the next score, we need to make sure it's a multi-year effort that we will need to do with the water departments, with our, fire department aspects that we can control, and then also work with dispatching to see what those little points were, and make sure that it's a consistent practice so that we can get those points. And the next time they would be out, based on the schedule, would be in like 3 more years.
Rob, you're up.
Yeah, when I ran in 2011, we were class 3. And then we went to a class 1 because we improved on our training.
Question.
Excuse me, we went from a class 3 to class 2 to improve on our training. And, do you have a copy of this, John? The report
I don't have,
with you?
I have the 2 ISO reports.
The actual report that was an attachment to
Yes.
this? You do? Okay, can you go to page 10?
I just,
Under telecommunications,
for 2017 or 2023, I don't have,
page 10 of the
Page
report.
566 of the board packet,
Well, it's.
okay,
page 10 of the,
it's
okay, so
534
page
of the
10,
board.
okay, let's see which one
you're going to the 2018.
Okay,
Says review telecommunicators total of 79 to 100. Why is that difference? Was it a software change or?
I don't know the answer to that, I'd have to find out.
Well, we're looking at just the aspect of maybe 19 points right there. We were short 9 or 10 points to get a class 1. By reviewing this, I see that under fire department, we were short 13.64. Planning and inspection, we were short 16 points. And fire safety, we were short 22 points. So we were only short 9 points to get a class 1 rating. And what I could see here just through fire department, planning, inspection and fire safety, we could have at least got 9 points under those 3 domains.
Let me give some clarity to the way the ISO report and the way they break it all down. These points that they have on here actually don't come across to the points there. You look at the emergency communications part, they've got these sub scores and the sub rating, and then it turns into, all of these hundreds of points under telecommunications turns into a total of 10 points available over here on the actual score on a
Well,
spreadsheet.
that's the grade of your section
It's,
in
yeah,
one, and then they're weighting the grade when they put it in.
So-
Well, let's go to page 17.
Are
On the
you
report.
talking about the report, this part of yeah, that,
For our attachment.
yeah,
Thank
okay,
you.
I just wanna make sure I'm getting it right.
We're going to page 17 where it says pre-fire planning and inspections. Okay, it says available credit is 12. It said that we earned 5.16. What's that about? What's the magic formula for that one?
Okay, doing it
Right, yeah, I'm not following.
Page
Here.
17 or page,
It's under page 17. Okay,
Right,
under H, it says
oh, okay.
pre-fire planning
Oh,
inspections. It
okay,
says.
oh, I see, credit available is 12, right?
Right, it
Okay.
says we got 5.16. And it says available credit 12. Why didn't we get 12?
So let me
But
give some
that's the
clarification too.
27, that's the old
Yeah.
report, so our new one, we got 12 out
We
of
got
12.
12 on it, isn't it?
Well, where's,
You're looking at the.
So you're, yeah.
You're looking at the 2017.
That's the thing.
You gotta look at the 2023.
That was an area we
Page
saw
5.
that we needed improvement and we did it.
We did.
So we are now 12 out of 12. So page 17 on the 2023 report is what you're looking for current.
What's this company, well, all right, I'm back on here. On page 17. Is this the current,
Yeah, that's the current one.
current one?
Yes.
Okay, well, it says company
Actually-
training. Available credit 25, we only got 15.63. Why is that?
I will need to ask and see if they're willing to share where those deductions were at.
Because right there, you know, that's almost puts us over to a class 1.
It was not the same kind of
That's not
point.
true.
No, it's not true.
That's what it's not
That's,
saying.
that's
It's
weight,
not a
those get
one-to-one.
weighted down. So the company training is part of training in general. And training in general, we got 8.13 points out of 9.
So those go into,
They all flow into a weighted number over here.
Right, so if you look at attachment C, that's the comparison that we should be looking at.
That's why I said,
Executive
that's why I said
summary.
earlier, what matters was really on this last page is the
Right.
credit available
Right,
versus what our score was. Yeah, because that, and what's that delta, because that's the points we're missing out on, and then you can go back to these detailed
breakdown.
pages
yeah,
and say, well, where are we scoring badly in the detailed pages that's leading to that weighted score being bad?
And it probably makes
But
sense.
there's no direct correlation between the 100 points here and 8 points here.
Yeah.
They don't explain that.
And so what would make sense, I would think, would be for us to put a administrative team together and see with the area that we have improvement, which ones, you know, would we be able to prioritize and invest in, encourage the water departments? But we need to get some information from ISO to, you know, how did they get where they're at?
This is a confusing document.
so
Can I ask Mike?
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Okay, I take the president's liberty to ask my questions now, since we've been around. the
I'm not
room.
done
Are you
yet.
done? Okay,
I'm not
when you're
done.
done.
I'm not done yet. Okay, because if you really go through the reports with the different weights, the different areas, you can see where maybe we could have gotten some more points, but with the special, I don't know what you want to call it, special interpretation relative to what's credited, what's not, what weight is more, it really isn't really specific as to those particular areas where, you know, like this when we're looking into like company training, you know, it's talking about, you know, 25 available credit and 15.63. But, you know, is that the totality of the total training for the whole organization? Is it in-service training versus, you know, cadet or different types of segment training? It doesn't really explain it. So my hat's off to you. I don't understand it. Not really. I mean, that's what it's just a disappointment. And then we paid for that accreditation process that we had. Remember where Chief Navarro was involved in that 3-year accreditation process? I know we're better than we were in 2017.
We are, and the score shows that, and that's the thing, I think the things that we can do, the score shows we improve.
No, the score shows that it got worse. You know, but
But the things we have control of,
Yeah.
we improve.
you say we have control, but you're not correct.
Okay.
Let
We have a
me,
lower score.
I wanna go back to page 10 that Rob brought up. Page 10 shows the emergency dispatch protocols. And I think you're suggesting that we don't have any control over emergency dispatch. But the fact is, we could get out of the emergency dispatch system right now and have control over it.
we got
we shouldn't be nice guys. If something's wrong with telecommunications such that they can't dispatch people efficiently, then we ought to get rid of them. And it's showing we get 0 point, I'm talking about the specific points, not the overall measurement, but on page 10 that Rob referred to, the third thing down, B, 0 points we got out of 20 on emergency protocols. What's wrong with dispatch that we get 0 points on their protocols? I mean, this is something we do have control over, and we shouldn't even wait 1 day to find out. The minute we see we got 0, we should call them up and say, what's wrong with you guys? Why is this happening? How can you fix it?
I'd be careful on that analysis though, because we're almost at a score of 90% on the available credits on just on emergency communications. The total available, the credit available is 10, and they're getting 8.99. So they're almost meeting the ISO 1 level for communication.
Well, but if you look at the total points, we have less than 75% of the total points. So I understand what you're saying. I don't disagree with your observation.
Yes.
But we're only getting 75% of the points there on page 10.
I think I think the issue, I mean, the report to me is saying there's 2 aspects of it. The green sheet on attachment C, that's kind of the final product of these preceding pages that break each area within a certain category down. And it flows into the green sheet, attachment C. I think the real work is looking at within those areas where there's some areas that Chuck talked about, finding the weak points in that area and then trying to figure out what to do about it. If we can. Some of it will be out of our control. But I think we just can't take the whole report and say we're failing in that regard, because really not. There are areas that we're improving upon, have improved on. And I think taking those areas that still need to be worked and focusing on how we get those resolved over the next 3 years, just to increase those numbers.
Yeah, to me, that's the opportunity is take, on this summary page, take the ones that have the biggest delta, the
Right,
credit
and
available,
and
say, how do we improve it?
Yeah.
We could spend a whole bunch of time, let's just use an example on ladder service. And it's like, okay, well, we can only go from a 3.83 to a 4.
Right,
Probably shouldn't put a lot of time there. If I go back down to company personnel, there, we're shy by almost 6 points.
right.
So, over half of our delta to get to an ISO 1 is that one row. So digging back in the report and figuring out for that 1 row, what would we need to do to dramatically increase the score on company personnel? And I don't disagree with you that my guess is some of it we control and some of it we don't control. Yeah, but it's, I want to just share my comments on it. So relative to Director Bernstein's kind of said or not, I'm neither upset nor happy with it, because I'm trying to understand the report, which I appreciate Chief Johnson trying to explain kind of what he knows and what he doesn't know, what they share, what they don't share, those kinds of things. I do think it's worthwhile. The worthwhile way to evaluate this is where we're shy of the credits available is adding a column to the spreadsheet here that talks about what are the 2 or 3 things we can focus on to actually make a difference. Because we can sit here and debate it and complain about the process and everything else all day long, or we can look at it and say where we're short major numbers of points. And I'm not saying do it on all of them, because some of them, some of them we don't control, and some of them, even if we controlled them, something like dispatch as an example, the overall communications, they're already hitting the 90% mark. So we should be looking at the places where we're not getting to the 90% mark and saying, where's the delta the greatest on those? And then what's the 2 or 3 opportunities that exist for us to make change to improve those particular scores? I also think just looking at this, having some peer group data would be helpful in as much as we can go solicit, if it's public information, is pick 3 or 4 departments in our area and compare. The reason I think it's worthwhile doing it in our area and not going outside of our area is our area, being San Mateo County, shares a dispatch center. We share a lot of water infrastructure. You know, some of the water companies are similar. They're under the same state constraints, the same local county constraints. So I think picking 2 or 3 of the departments in San Mateo County and saying, okay, this is gonna be our peer group, and just seeing how they're scoring versus how we're scoring.
Compare.
And then asking ourselves, are they doing something different in these categories? If they're doing the exact same thing we're doing, their company personnel strategy is exactly the same as ours, and they got a 14 and we got a 9, now we have the view of, okay, well, it's subjective. You know, because if we're doing the exact same thing and they got higher points, then it's obviously not a fact-driven, data-driven process. The opinion of the evaluator contributes to it.
And very little.
Figure out how much canning you gotta do every time you come out. I mean, yeah, that's what we're doing.
So I do think some peer group data would be interesting.
Can we get that? Can we get that?
We get that.
Okay.
You know, on things that we don't control, so something like the water district where, yeah, the delta is pretty good. It's definitely that the water district is bringing us down. I think we do have some tools available to us. Maybe it's not the ordinance, but maybe it's public visibility of, hey, did you know that, you know, it's almost like a blog post that we put out that says kind of that, did you know that, you know, there's a potential impact on your insurance rates through the ISO score because of the water district's performance, and let's explain where we're coming up short.
Being able to quantify
And
it.
making it visible, you gotta quantify it, you gotta try to keep it factual, not political, but factual. But we do have the opportunity, or we could, I'm just throwing out random ideas, I'm not suggesting I've thought through which one's the greatest of them. Send a letter to each of the water districts and say, we're coming up short in this category on fire safety that's attributable to the services you provide. And here's the steps we'd ask you to respond to us about remediation steps, remediate these issues. Let them come back and tell us that we can't test the hydrants because of water, you know, water consumption requirements or water conservation requirements in California, you know, versus it's staffing. Because if it's staffing, it's like, well, maybe you need to add more staff because you're creating a safety issue in our community. But we do have the opportunity, I guess, the comment I'd make is, in as much as things we don't control affect it, we have an opportunity to expose those things publicly in a nice professional way. I'm not saying it's gotta be, you know, kind of a real controversial way, but expose it as a fire safety issue that we're concerned about.
I think also, to go along with it, to not stop at the water company, but I think it's a city issue. And I think the ratepayers would want to know if there's something that is not being done from the water supply company and the city to reduce rates, you know, insurance rates. I think the public will know it. I won't know it, I think my neighbor will know it too. But they're being impacted by rates all the time. The city wanting to put taxes on a lot of different things on the rate player. So I think a combination of those and that has to be a plan and approach to each city. Each city may be a little bit different, but I think the rate payers, you know, will certainly benefit in the long run. And I think every city want to try their best to try to improve the quality of life for each of the rate payers in some form of fashion. And they can put pressure on the water.
And I think with that said, I tend to agree with what you're saying. I think that all comes back to the where are we not hitting the 90% mark in an area? Because I would have a really hard time saying, you know, there's a lot to expose on communications. They're hitting their 90%. So we're trying to get to 90 and they're basically hitting their 90%. Come down to our own, we're not hitting the 90%. You know, we're not quite there. We're at about 82% of our available points in our own. So I'd have a hard time throwing a dagger at the communications group when the bigger contributor to us not meeting our 90% goal is ourselves. The flip side of it is the water district. You know, that's dragging us down even more. Then it's worth exposing. because they're, they're the furthest dealt in any of the categories to us meeting, the kind of the stated goal, which is trying to get to 90 or above.
And has consistently been,
And yeah, and I can see the consistency just through,
yeah. these
they
are-
they declined, which
Right.
makes it even worse.
Right.
So that they did improve. It's hard to look at communications again and say, yeah, we're talking about a rounding error of decline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
we're
is-
talking about a reasonable improvement for our own fire district on the department, the department stuff. And then the water supply, it's heading the wrong direction. So it's gonna get worse. It's probably not gonna get, if something doesn't change, it'll.
And I think the
Here's
work
the-
plan,
I'm sorry, Mark, but
and I think the work plan over the next few years is kind of prioritize what are the waterfall, how you gonna see which ones are most important, most needed, and then on down to the last. Especially if you come back. Some of the stuff, the most important ones that many points can be problem. Towards the top of the list to try to deal with.
So you believe just by prior practice, the next report would be 2028? If we didn't contact them and ask for something different, it's every 5 years, you said is the normal?
Yes, I think
It was 6 because
it
of
was
COVID.
taking place, all of this was in 2022. And then it came out in 2023.
And then you need 3 years of,
From what I,
Continuous-
trying to go off the
continuous-
top of my head, from what I remember.
you need roughly
it was-
3 years of continuous records showing an improvement for them to give you credit for it then.
Yeah, that was the data.
So what that tells me is we have somewhere around, it takes them a year to do the report, so if I back up from 2028, I go back to 2027. And then we have to have 3 years of consistency. So I'm essentially back to 2026. So we kind of have a year to put plans in place to try to impact the outcome of our 2028 report.
The full strategic plan.
Yeah, I'm just doing a calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not, it's
it's
unfair for us to kind of say, what are you gonna do about this category or that
Without
category?
getting the time.
Given the lack of information that's there, but I think it's perfectly reasonable for the board to take a position that says, we'd like to see a work plan that outlines the focus areas that we're going to start working on, continually working on, starting no later than 2026, which is the beginning window we have to actually impact the outcome. I think that's a reasonable position for the board.
Right.
well,
Go ahead.
good, let you go.
Good. Chuck, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna make the suggestion, it strikes me that there's gotta be consultants available who advise agencies on this, and I think we should look for a consultant to help us, because I have the feeling we don't really understand very well what it is that they're looking for, and it would help us to be on the right track right from the beginning.
Yeah, I always have mixed emotion to the answer to a problem as a consultant.
Well,
As
in
a
this
general
case-
practice, because it's a skill, I'd rather take one of our high performing battalion chiefs or division chiefs or something and task them with, go learn the system so that we have that in-house.
But I was looking at the personnel thing, which is one of the keys here, where we're only getting,
Yeah,
part of the credit. And it relates to who's counted in the available firefighters at the scene. And whether or not, say, a battalion chief is counted or not counted. And that, what I'm saying to you is, I don't care how good a firefighter you were, if you didn't know what the right
yeah, I
thing
hear
to
what you're
do,
saying, yeah. What's the secret formula
what's the secret?
as to how you have to present it that they count it properly?
Exactly.
Because it could be a presentation issue.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about some general advice, I'm talking about specific, yeah.
Well, I think you can always, the point is, in having someone internally, working with someone externally that can provide, help develop that source of information and skill so that at some point we would be self-sufficient. We don't have to hire someone. And I think we got.
Yeah, it's either a committee or it's an individual but there has to be some accountability that somebody has a responsibility for staff to kind of drive the score to a different place. And it seems to me we have about a year to put all the plans in place to make,
Which is
start
not-
making
not
that
that
happen.
long.
Which isn't that long, but it's also, I don't know that it's complete rocket science to, I think it is a lot of what Chuck just said, which is understanding what are the levers that make the change. And then asking ourselves, what do we have available to change those levers? And then if it's things we need to fundamentally change in the way we're running the district, whether it's staffing or something else, then that's a discussion back for a budget discussion to say, we're willing to spend the money to get a better score to do better in those areas. And for me, I wouldn't want to do any of those investments to quote, just get a better score, unless we believe that score is reflective of we're going to provide better service by doing it. We're gonna be a better department. In other words, I don't wanna window dress and spend a ton of money investing a bunch of money to change a score if the score doesn't make sense, or isn't going to change our level of
We
service.
should be able to, organizationally. You're looking, I'm not your rater, because I would give you for when we're doing these things, ladder service, I mean, we've got 2 tillers. What is their definition of a ladder service? Deployment analysis? I mean, company personnel, is this a lot of like subjective type stuff, John? Where these raters are saying, well, 9 is better than 8, 7 is better than 6, but you have 8 on the scene, so you get, what is it over here? 7.69, because you were short 2 firefighters, or, I don't, what's the formula here for this thing?
I know that they ask a lot of questions, so obviously those type of questions I sent to our training and operations and everything to answer those. So I don't know those details, however, they are specific of hazmat calls, medical calls, all the
Well, we
different
don't
types
have
of calls.
hazmat unit.
And
You
so
know,
they look at what you're able to provide, what do you carry on an engine, what are the different ladders? And then they look at all the training components that everybody's trained in, how quickly can you get all of these? And they have their own criteria, and they're seeing we meet their criteria for what they call I believe, an effective fighting force, and be able to get water to a fire. It's the ability to put out a fire, and they're looking at the effectiveness of your fire department in that whole
Is there a
aspect.
magic number on the scene for a fire?
I'd have to look and see what their number is.
Right, that's the trick.
That's, the thing is, as the chief said, it depends on the rater,
They
right, chief?
they don't provide us with a grading rubric, right? So you don't know what goes into the magic potion to give you that score. It'd be really good. And it would be really great if they would provide it when they give you the score. Like, but
Have they give us enough information so we know what we need to provide and what we can do, but.
Does this
Yeah,
guy
behind the
or
scenes.
woman or group, did they ever come out to?
Not on this one, usually they do,
They do
they
come
usually will come and send, but again, this was COVID. And it was all
Word of mouth.
How much did
email,
we pay for this?
nothing.
Oh, we didn't pay for anything?
And again, it's just a.
I was gonna say, you go to the DA's office and file a fraud report or something.
No, it's,
I mean, I don't, I just see a huge subjective report that doesn't really give us baseline.
well, and it'd be interesting to see for the insurance companies that do provide insurance in our district, do they even use this? Because if they don't even use it, I don't know what difference that makes again too, I don't know.
Well, thank you for your interpretation, Chief. Thank you.
well,
So let's try to turn this back to Chief Lorenzen for a second and just kind of hear what you've kind of heard from the board,
I have.
different points of view.
this is good.
You kind of, I guess it raises the question of kind of, okay, take all this feedback, what do you want to do with it?
Yeah, and what I've heard from the board is, this is important to the board, and I think they're, for us, I think we'll probably put a work group together. Try and figure out, what we can, areas of opportunity in there. We'll reach out and see if there's a consultant that specializes in the actual process of how to properly submit, somebody who knows the system that might be able to assist us. not hard for me to get some other reports from, especially in our county. It would be really problematic if we have the same reports in the county in the same time period and we have different scores for the dispatch.
Yeah, the dispatch
Right.
score should be
That would be-
exactly the same.
That's
But there's
right.
things like, somebody mentioned the EMD thing that's 0 there. We have EMD, it's happening, it just feels like that was a mistake. Should have gotten probably 20 points for that. But, you know, I think we should go through and audit some of that stuff and see if it is making sense. And then it feels like a report back to the board on some, you know, areas of opportunity.
That makes sense. I think that's a rational response. I've been in the same situation in my professional career where we have industry analysts that are evaluating your company and your technology. And they're putting out these reports that says, you know, this one's so much better than this one. I'm like, on what basis? Yeah, they don't give a criteria, they don't give a real score. It's very subjective. It depends on the bias of the individuals that are doing the analysis. So in the industry, we used to go through the exact same process, but then we would then go to their scorecard approach and try to back off from the scorecard and say, okay, well, if we want to move these 3 or 4 numbers, what do we think we could do to move them? It doesn't mean they'll move. But at the same time, you do end up feeling better if you're doing something with a report like this to try to make a difference. And if you say, hey, you know, we improved, dramatically in this area from 2017 to 2023 to 2028, and the score still doesn't reflect it, then you kind of have to look and say, well, are we as a group satisfied that we did what we thought we could do? And the process has bias, the process isn't completely accurate. I think that exists, and this is the absolute moral equivalent to what I experienced with industry analysts. And, but again, I think that's the rational approach, which is, come up with a work group, come up with an action plan that talks about it. I think looking for consultants is a reasonable thing. If there are people that are experts in this, we used to hire experts to tell us how to get better scores. Never resulted in better scores, but we still hired experts to really tell us how to do it. So it's all consistent. But I think what you're hearing from the board, from my lens, is it is important to the board, and rather than just think it as okay, well, we're done with that task and the report's been presented, I think the board's interested in seeing some action plans around it.
And I also want to ensure, we are pretty close to dropping down into the class 3 level when you look at this.
Yeah.
And even though we did a lot to improve our performance, there are others that we may not have control over that could drag us down. So
Correct.
at a minimum, we need to look for ways to ensure that we can
We don't drop.
increase our internal performance so that if others can't affect them, it doesn't pull us down.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's part of the process, right, of creating our own chart that we're measuring, which are the scores we just don't control.
Right.
And to some extent, it becomes wasting a lot of time on the things we don't control, and then making those visible doesn't make sense. We should put our energy on the things we can make a difference on. Chuck?
I just have a quick question for the chief that's kind of related, because I was wondering about all this. Somebody told me that Redwood City dispatches its own fire apparatus. Do you know anything about that?
It's not accurate as far as I know.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
That was police, the police department dispatch.
But they don't dispatch, they're fire.
No.
But that's the thing, police with Menlo Park and Atherton,
Right,
have their own police dispatch.
His
So
police,
it's not, police dispatch is not unified in the county. It's just,
So do you
Fire
need,
animal.
do we need to?
we don't need
Anything? Okay.
no, it was a discussion topic. So no motions or
We have
anything
good
else.
feedback. Do you have any questions for the board, John? Oh, I think we've got some feedback.
Okay.
Thank you,
Great,
John.
thank you.
okay, well, thank you, John.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and close that discussion and we'll move on to the proposed agenda items. So just a reminder that the items in number 8 are now the individual requesting it has an opportunity to talk about not the merits of doing it, but give additional clarification, and then the boards go vote whether we're going to put them on the agenda. The items in number 8. And both of them happen to be, these items happen to be from Director Solano. So we'll take them one at a time. I'll ask Director Solano to just comment if he has anything additional to add to the request for the resolution on improving fire safety for the 320 Sheridan complex. But we're not gonna try to answer the question tonight.
Well, we discussed the resolution on improving fire safety and emergency response at 320 Sheridan Proposed Apartment Complex that was submitted by a member of the public. We had that when we submitted that.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, and we know what the minimums are relative to, was it one egress, chief, for every 200 apartments or dwellings? Or that type of a structure. So the minimum would be one egress per every 200 apartments.
That is what's in the code right now, correct?
The two's better than one. I think the minimums here, by your interpretation or an interpretation of the California Fire Code, I think has a lot to be desired. Not as a safety factor. I don't think the state legislature had any purpose in specifically cutting a specific one solution fits all. And I think with the Sheridan Drive, since there is an emergency fire exit that's proposed, in additional, I think it was 7 feet on either side, would make it accessible for another egress. So there is an egress there, and that's why people, we got over 50 emails on that, and there was a 300 signature petition that was presented by the city of Menlo to the city of Menlo Park, requesting the second egress. Two is better than one. There is a egress, an additional egress there for a fire engine or emergency vehicle to go through there. And just with some renovations done to that particular egress, it could accommodate another egress there. So there would be two there. The 1700 Middlefield Road, how many egresses did that have, John? Because that was in our fire district.
2700.
Yeah, the one that had the 8-alarm fire.
So it has a loop, there's two, but when it comes to the entire site, there's actually one. So it actually just comes down to one.
Back to Middlefield.
Only one?
Correct.
But
I want to be careful that we're not discussing the topic versus the merits of having it on the agenda.
Well, there was
And I
two
think
that I saw.
the key question for whether it's on the agenda
Oh, yeah,
is
well,
whether
it's-
whether it's a fire issue or whether it's a traffic issue. I think the emails were a little confused on that, but let's see if there's a motion to have the discussion and a second to have the discussion. Then we can have a quick discussion amongst other board members about any points of view, whether we should be discussing it, and we'll vote on whether it's gonna be on the agenda. Okay, so Rob's moving it. Have you moved it?
Yeah,
I assume.
What-
Okay.
What's the motion?
Thank you, Robert.
To have this on the next
Oh.
agenda. And
Robert
Robert has seconded it. Okay, Chuck,
No, no, I was just gonna move.
Oh, you're gonna move in second, okay. Do,
I think it's worth it to at least put it on, because we got so much public comment, and we just got 2 more letters today.
yeah,
Yeah, I
So-
forwarded it.
I think
But
it's,
as a
I think
matter
it's
of
worth
discussion,
putting it
Yeah,
on.
on the agenda.
I don't think that pretends that necessarily that every board member, myself included, is supportive of actually
Right.
sending a letter or doing something.
Right,
like
but
that.
at least the
Having the
discussion will happen.
discussion,
We haven't gotten it for sure.
we haven't
Right.
got to that point, so having the discussion is important.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just vote on this item, whether we're gonna have it on the next agenda or not. And all those in favor of the motion? Anybody opposed? Okay,
I have a question.
unanimous, so that will go on next agenda. And I assume we'll put together just a brief staff report. I can talk to you offline about what that should include. But it should just, the staff report should simply remind the board of what the current policy is on how we make these decisions.
Would you, I was just chatting with Steve here about the, I'll call it the quality of the resolution. Would you like us to work on that resolution to make sure it's appropriately worded?
I believe, I mean, others can jump in here, is if we're going to discuss a resolution, I think, yes, we should discuss the resolution that the residents submitted, but I think we should also have a resolution prepared by staff that staff believes would be an appropriate resolution for the district, if we're going to do one. Because they may not be the same.
They were
All
not the
right,
same.
yeah.
Right.
No, but the Atherton just passed for their high density housing to use Bay Road in Ringwood as a place for high density housing, which affects traffic relative in that particular area also. So that needs to be included in your staff report too. That Atherton just had some passed a high density project.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But you're saying that you.
No, hold on a second, I'm saying
I'm
is,
telling him what
what I
also had.
yeah, what I'm suggesting is that the staff report should address what our responsibilities are as a fire district in these processes of, this, kind of where the dividing lines are between what we do and what the cities do. And then secondarily, if we're going to be requesting, or we're going to be discussing a resolution to potentially send in to vote on a resolution, we should be voting on a resolution that our staff has prepared, taking into consideration the residents. We can choose to approve the residents' resolution, but we should have the alternative available to us.
And we can talk more offline. Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge for us. Yeah, it's possible the board is gonna take a direction that is contrary to staff recommendation.
Yeah.
That's the board's prerogative.
Right.
It would just, it is challenging how we interpret and apply the fire code. We're very consistent on that. Yeah, if the board adopts a resolution that takes a position that's different, and it's just a resolution that doesn't have teeth, it's not a change or a proposal to make a new ordinance or something like that, it's an awkward and uncomfortable position.
So I'm gonna stop you. That's all stuff that should get discussed at the
Right,
next
so
meeting.
we're just putting
Because
this on
you're
the
getting
agenda.
into the merits of whether we should or shouldn't be sending in a resolution. And I have a point of view on that too, I'm just, but we voted to put it on the agenda, so we should just move on.
Yeah.
I'll work offline with you on kind of what I think supporting material.
That was just
would be.
foreshadow.
So, okay. All right. I think we can all foreshadow lots of controversy on this one. Okay, the second item was the alarm system process is defined by Measure U. And I guess I'm not really certain what's being suggested here.
Well, the chief has already contacted the schools. So I don't think we need to address that.
We have a meeting with the superintendent tomorrow.
So there's no need for us to address
No, I
it.
think we need to talk, because I think it's one of the things, does this apply just to that school system, or is that available
Any
to
school
all?
It should be available to all.
And that's further discussion.
Well, so maybe it's not just defined by Measure U, but for school districts in general and fire district.
Sure, we could open it up that way also. I mean,
So does the board have it sounds like the board has a desire to have a generic topic about how the fire district can help school districts with their alarm system processes.
Yeah, because we know that,
Yes,
Okay, so does somebody want to make,
I'll make a motion.
he's not gonna move, it sounds like you're not gonna move your Measure U comment, so if there's a motion for the other one, I think we can modify this.
I'll move to modify it so that the school districts in general within the fire district are included in this item,
all districts within the
or fire district.
district.
Yeah.
I'll second
Okay, there's a motion, a second, is there any questions on the motion? Michelle, did you pick up the motion? Okay.
Can I do have a question?
Yes.
Did you want to include all schools, including private schools, or just public schools?
Within the district.
Schools within
Maybe
the
all
district,
schools.
generic schools, to be all schools. Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, this one may not show up at the next meeting. This is, it'll get agendized when staff has time to do.
Yeah, so I'll amend the
work on it.
motion to include all schools within the district,
Okay,
our fire district.
okay. You're good with that on your second?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor of having this on a future agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we'll put this on the list for future agenda items and figure out when staff will be able to address that. Sounds like in the meantime, you're meeting with Menlo Park, so the one that's most front
The
and
one
center
that's
right
being
now.
discussed.
Yeah. Okay, and then,
We will
Your staff.
happily meet with any school that reaches out to us and looks for a professional.
great. And then there was so that was all for item 8. On 9, there were, as I mentioned, and I appreciate Rob doing this at the last meeting, if you have items for new proposed agenda items, being able to put them in here, this helps us document it correctly. And so Rob has made the request to discuss recognizing retirement of Board of Supervisors, Dave Pine, and Warren Slocum. And we are not voting, I'm gonna get myself wrapped around the axle on our own process here.
I think it's tricky because now we're putting them on the agenda in advance, so.
Yeah, but it's just, we're documenting it on the agenda,
Okay.
so we're not discussing it or voting on it today. Okay, so is that accurately reflecting what you wanted on the agenda?
Sure.
Okay. Are there any other new
Let me
proposed
ask a
agenda
question
items?
about this, so just, when are they retiring?
The end of the year.
So timing wise, we couldn't consider this. Let me back up a second, I was gonna make a similar comment. Originally, when we talked about this, you wanted the discretion of when to put it on the agenda, which I agree about. In Rob's first thing, this issue of the 320 Sheridan is.
It's got time sensitivity.
Time sensitive,
Yeah.
exactly.
I recognizing that.
The alarm
as we go
system
into
is not sensitive, but it occurs to me that this one with the retirement is kind of time sensitive also. It's not a huge issue, but recognizing someone a month after they leave or 2 months after just seems a little out of date.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure within our. I guess as the board's, if the board's desire is to accelerate this and have a discussion on it, we can do that.
Of course. Are you talking about tonight or?
No, but we do it at the next meeting, which would still be prior to the retirement.
Well, the retirement is at the end of the year, right?
Yeah, so the next our next meeting, we'll discuss it.
Discuss it and then pull together a resolution and. get it
Yeah, we
signed
do the whole thing. We have the whole topic at the next meeting.
And give it to them before the end of the year.
For them.
I'm not gonna work on Christmas, okay?
So one of the.
Why can't we just make a motion and see if we have a second relative to to recognize them in some type of resolution, since we did post it? Right, we can do that.
You can do that.
Okay, I make a motion that we prepare a resolution for the two Board of Supervisors, Dave Pine and Warren Slocum, for their retirement from San Mateo County in our community.
Is there a second for the motion?
I second it. I'll get somebody.
Okay. So discussion on it? So I have discussion topic on this one. So, and it's nothing personal about the individuals, because I know neither of them. To be real upfront, but I've been on the board coming up on 2 years now. And from my lens, the board, at the board level and the fire district level, we've had little to no interaction with Dave Pine or Warren Slocum that I'm aware of. So I think for me, the question is, do we want to retain our recognition system in general, our broader recognition system for people that have actually had some form of material impact on the thing we do, which is fire service, not just because they're politicians in the area. And so I think, you know, recognizing the community members that were involved in the resuscitation of a child, that fits. If we had a supervisor that paid particular attention to our initiatives and promoted programs to support the district and other things, it would apply there. I know we've had some support from some congressmen for the task force as an example, so you could envision that being something where the individual's done something to support our cause. In this particular case, and maybe they've done a ton over the years, I'm unaware of. I'm just saying in my 23 months on the board, I'm not aware of them having any particular impact on our outcome at all.
I think, not to kind of bring things up, I think you have a valid point there, but I think Warren Slocum, I know what he have done around, especially working in East Palo Alto, I know. As a executive director of a nonprofit organization, he was very interested in getting a lot of funding for affordable housing for us over there. Now, that just that one aspect, you would not have done that if you would not have.
Yeah.
So your point, which is trying to make it, I think is valid. I think, while their aides are still there, you ask them, they'll put together a laundry list of things, I'm sure, through Warren's background. I don't know about Dave Bond, but for Warren's background of his work in the Central kind of as it relates to the fire district, maybe. So I think,
Yeah, that's all. I'm like I said, it's not a combination of either individual as much as a generic thing about when we as a district or in a board are talking about recognizing people. I just personally think it's important that there's some connectivity to what we do. Otherwise, it's blowing a sweet little kiss over their way to at the time of their retirement. But to me, it has little to no meaning if they didn't actually contribute to what we do for a living.
okay. So where we are.
Any other
Rob,
comments?
did you have a comment?
Do I have a motion and a second? Well,
No, we have a motion in a second, so it's just
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, the discussion item is that,
To put it on the.
Board of
agenda.
Supervisors represents particular districts within our county. And the county runs our OES section, that does our dispatch. Public Works supports a lot of our road projects within our fire district. We have an unincorporated area that's part of our fire district that the Board of Supervisors, govern and control. So as a direct result, I mean, I think it's pretty narrow-minded of you to zero in on individual achievement relative to when you're dealing with a totality of 5 supervisors that represent our total county. And one of them happens to be part of our fire district as representing us. So I think it's pretty narrow-minded, and I think they should be recognized.
I don't look at it as I'm trying to be narrow-minded as
That's
much
what it
as
sounds like.
well, you can interpret it that way if you'd like.
Well, I have.
Which is fine, but just for clarity, all I'm trying to do is make sure that we, as a board, we have an understanding that says when we're recognizing people to maintain the value of that recognition, that we have it. It sounds like in this particular case, I think, what Director Jones shared with us about what he has actually contributed sounds like, before my time and things I'm not aware of, that's educational, that's great. It sounds like there's a connection there. I have no problem approving a resolution if that's the case. And all I'm trying to do is raise the point for the board that says I do think there should be some reasonable connectivity to what we do.
And I think that's the process we try to adopt so that anything like this comes again, we have a methodology of going about kind of putting things together.
Chuck?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment to Rob that, your argument about why we should do it, I don't know that it's generalizable to the other agencies that we deal with. Insofar as we work with the Menlo Park City Council in a way, and we're not about to be recognizing all the people that are leaving there. We're not gonna recognize probably all the people that are leaving in East Palo Alto. I don't know if anybody, I don't know what's happened in council in Atherton, but I just don't think. Your argument's a good one in a way, there's just so many people that would qualify under your argument. That I don't feel like giving away certificates to everybody in the world, so.
That's my narrow thinking, is that I agree with you. I don't think we should just be giving away certificates to everybody in the world.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against it because of that, that's not because they haven't done anything, but lots of people have done things, that they just haven't done very
Well,
much.
nominate them. Nominate whoever you want to and bring it to the board and see if the board will recognize them.
I think it's, to me, it's part of what I think the board is trying, over the last couple of years, trying to get to is establish policies and procedures on how to approve and to move forward on things. Right now, we don't have any real basic criteria set up to acknowledge, other than, I like Joe, so let me give Joe a plaque and send him on his way in retirement. That can be great, but I know Joe has done a lot of things. Let's just kind of figure out what Joe has done. And then as a board, recognize that, hey, is that enough to validate, some plaque on the wall with our signature on it? But right now, we have no, it's just like, it's a feel good kind of thing, right? That's what it seems like to, I'm sure, to some people. But, if you don't know the man, you don't know it's some of his achievement. I said, let's establish that process and procedure. And then, anybody, so we all know that if we're gonna bring up someone, it at least has to fall into that particular.
So there's a corresponding request on that I would be remiss in not to raise from the chief, which is, in as much as people are going to ask for resolutions recognizing people that the boards will be approving, is that individual should be providing the material to staff
Which is
to
a
prepare
lot.
the resolution, not leave it to staff to have to go create it. So I think, to Robert's point, I think just looking ahead to the future on these kinds of things is the right way to consider these, is to have the individual that thinks they should be recognized provide just an outline of a draft resolution for why are they making a recommendation, which would be the input the chief's gonna need to prepare a resolution, staff prepare a resolution to bring back
Usually,
to the board.
maybe split them up and
Well, I have a
recognize Dave
suggestion.
Pine, huh?
I have a suggestion. I mean, we have two supervisors in our district, one of them is Warren Slocum. And so I would, recognize him. I mean, I think he's done a lot for North Fair Oaks, but again, I'm kind of in the same camp as Gary and Chuck in terms of what is the direct contribution we're making to the fire district. Now, I know that Warren's improved a lot of things in North Fair Oaks, he's spoken to East Palo Alto as well, so I wouldn't mind if we just did one that's in our district, which is Warren. But I wanna hear why, and I don't know what, Rob, why you have a preference, it seems, for Dave Pine over Warren, and I don't know, I'm just genuinely curious.
No, I put them both down,
Yeah,
okay? If the board feels that Dave Pine shouldn't get recognition award from the board, so be it. If the board feels that Warren Slocum should get one, so be it. So I think what we need to do is split them up into two separate motions.
Okay, so there was a motion on the table for them together. So are we pulling that motion?
Yeah, let's pull that
withdraw the
motion.
motion.
We're withdrawing
And then
that
split
motion.
them into different
Okay,
motions.
so do we have a motion for Warren Slocum?
I'll move, because I want us to present our North Fair Oaks fire stuff at his last
Yeah,
meeting.
and I'll second.
Okay. There's a motion, and a second. Any further discussion on a Warren Slocum recognition? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And I'm a nay as well, so it's a 3-2, the majority carries. And again,
No, I
I
know,
want
this
to,
is just to get it on the agenda.
I want to make the comment very
No,
clearly in the minutes that this is not a reflection of my view on Warren Slocum as much as what I view as kind of a broken process in the board that we should pay attention to in the future.
Wait, what was that, Steve?
I mean, my understanding is that you just voted to adopt a resolution of unknown content, not just to put it on the agenda for next month. Am I misunderstanding what that was the motion when it was for both of them?
We are with the context that in this case, the recommending director, which is Director Solano, will provide some input into the content of that resolution.
I just point out that it's a little odd that you just approved a resolution where you have not seen the content of the resolution that you.
Well, I thought
It's not a resolution, it's a commendation, not a resolution.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I thought it was going on the agenda.
Well, so that's a further oddity about what the vote was.
So,
Not-
I mean,
we
the
didn't all
agenda
vote on it.
item says new proposed agenda item.
No, but we,
I know,
okay,
but
we're getting this wrapped around the next one, because we talked about that
the timing,
the timing
Yeah,
doesn't
I
work
get
for that. So we accelerated the process.
yes,
So we have now, which in the future, I think on these, if there's a time element, to Steve's point, we need to have the resolution or the commendation prepared at the time of the meeting.
we
The
have a
director that
meeting-
wants to bring it forward has the responsibility to work with staff to create that information.
Yes,
And then we can vote on it.
So-
In this particular case, I'm comfortable with the idea that it's, yes, we don't know the full content of it,
well,
but there's been a motion, it's been approved, is that
so
Director
Gary,
Solano would work with staff
Right.
to.
we have a meeting on December 10th that we could
This is,
do something in terms of timing to put this on that agenda before we even vote on the final whatever for the regular.
I don't,
makes an effort.
I don't think we need to
Okay,
drag this
that's
out.
fine.
I think that it's fine, the commendations aren't rocket science.
No, they're
I think
not.
staff can work with Director Solano and come up with a commendation.
Okay,
We can send it out by email informationally. And if anybody has a major complaint, they can ring up the chief and tell
okay, so I take.
them. Well, they
back-
can't ring
I
up
take
the other,
back that
they
it's
can't,
on-
they
I
can't
take it
reply
back, it's
all
on
to
a
the
future
email because
agenda
of the
item.
Brown
It's
Act.
gonna- We're actually doing that tonight, we're deciding whether or not we're gonna present a commendation at the December meeting.
I guess we would. Yeah, if we're representing them in person
that's-
versus send them across. I don't know what the protocol is.
Okay, but,
Yeah,
but,
you read a commendation in
Correct.
a meeting. So we'd be reading it in the December 10th meeting or the
or the
normal meeting
17th,
in December 17th. I prefer to do it in the normal meeting.
yeah, that's fine, I just wanted to clarify the timing.
So
'Cause it's
So we
so-
can prepare the commendation, we're gonna read it at that meeting. If there's a problem with the commendation, we'll adjust the commendation and read it. That work?
Yes.
We'll figure out where to properly agenda.
Chuck, I'm sorry.
Right. I'm glad we're kind of slowing this down a little bit, because I actually feel very uncomfortable having our vote reflected in the minutes. It just seems ugly to have a commendation and have it be 3-2 or something like that. It's not much of a commendation. And so,
I think that's about the
I guess I was gonna ask our count, is there a way where we could take a straw poll vote that wasn't recorded in the minutes on these things?
It's already been
I
recorded.
don't believe so.
It is what it is.
I think it is what it is. The
Absolutely.
commendation is from the district.
Right,
It's a
Through
reflection of our
board,
process.
There were 3-2 majority. It's not,
But
the commendation is not gonna say, whereas so-and-so voted against this commendation.
yes, it will, it will tell who voted against.
No.
and who
not
voted-
in the
It's
comments.
not gonna be a resolution.
No, but in the minutes.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but the minute that we're,
Change the vote. That's all you have to
the
do.
minutes, as I stated, it's not having to do with the merits of the
Okay.
individual commendation as much as the process. that's
I just wondered if there was a way to do it a little bit.
Would that be the
nicer.
chief's signature or the board president's signature? Board president's signature. So, since you voted against it, you're gonna sign it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm representing the board, the majority of the board, I'm not representing myself.
Okay, well, I
Last I
just wanna
checked.
make sure you'll sign it as board president.
Okay, so are we going to have is there a motion, a second motion then on the Dave Pine?
I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, is there a second of that motion? I'm not hearing any seconds on the motion. Okay,
I don't know.
okay, so that did not get a second, so we won't be voting or discussing that. Okay, moving on to reports and any other new agenda items for the next meeting.
No.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the committee reports. And we'll start with HR.
We met. Let me pull my report. We, the staff, provided us with a survey that was given to employees. And we discussed that survey that was done. There were 74 responses. There were,
This is a general employee survey or
yeah, it was an employee survey that was.
employee satisfaction survey or?
No, it was, Menlo Park Fire Protection District inclusion assessment, final analysis and recommendation.
So it's about inclusion. Okay, thank you.
And it talked about the results. We broke it down and we need to work on a little bit of what the further presentations will be relative to this and how it will affect the organization. Maybe go back and solicit some more information so we can present it to the full board. Robert, you want to add?
No, I think that.
Would it be possible for the board to see the report?
I'll send it out tomorrow.
So we know what we're talking about?
I think I think that would be very important, because I think there's some policy that we really, address or look at.
Is this an anonymous survey?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
So, and maybe some agenda item and agenda meeting and agenda item.
Yeah, well, that's something that the HR committee can decide they want to put on an agenda and put it on. So that's not part of the, I mean, if it's an HR topic that they're working, the HR committee is working on, they can naturally progress that into the agenda when they're ready to have it for the full
For
board.
the full, like
Yeah,
recommendations.
Just like we do with the finance
Right.
reports and everything else, or the facilities report. So it's just a normal process-based
Right.
agenda item. Okay, anything else for HR?
That's Robert. You want to?
Okay.
Thank you.
Facilities, Robert?
I think the chief kind of went over, a lot of conversation we had around facilities, so, how much you have some knowledge for.
No, the only thing I would mention is just in that report beyond the kind of change that the chief made about where we're at in the process, because we're gonna keep bringing multiple approvals forward as the only funding approved is that initial funding for the design. But there is a chart in there that's showing the funding, the capital improvement funds available. And we're within shooting distance of having the projected amount already in the capital, funded in the capital
Yeah,
improvement
which
fund.
I think is impressive.
Yeah, and that's after taking out other things that are already committed and other things, so.
But that's cool, right?
That's self-funding, yeah, self-funding from our, basically
All
not spending all of our
reserves,
money every year.
reserves and,
Investment returns, other
Yeah.
things that are generating capital for
I
us,
mean,
so.
we're managing it.
Yeah,
well.
we're managing, I think as a board, we're managing it really well to be able to set that, to set that quantity of money amount.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of fire districts and fire departments, I suspect, that in a similar situation would pour all that money into the operational expenses and then be doing a bond raise of some kind to fund an
Yeah.
improvement. And,
Yeah.
I think it's a real testament to the fact that we have a disciplined approach to our spending, by the chief and his staff that allows us flexibility to fund these projects without having to go back to the taxpayer
Or issue debt,
or issue debt.
yeah.
Well, that's going back to the taxpayer.
Yeah. And
You-
then in the end,
When you
that's
issue,
the-
when you
yeah,
issue
that's
debt,
the
you're essentially
tax
going back to the
debt,
taxpayer,
Yeah,
putting the burden of interest on them.
on them, yeah.
Yeah,
And from what I looked at the finance report, having those funds that we got invested give us a return on a consistent basis, I mean, we're not going to get all we want, but it gives us a consistent
Yeah.
return. So the other part of that is that it's keep pushing and shoving, we always can have a, where you're finding.
yeah, and to be clear, when I talk about the funding that's in that report, that's preliminary numbers, we don't have a bid to build the building yet. And as we all know, construction projects could be wildly different, but I just wanted to point out that there is the parallel track is running with finance and facilities to keep track of the funding requirements for the project. Chuck, did you have a question on?
Well, I have a
facilities?
comment and a question. The comment was if you look at the finance report for the month, the projection now is that we will do better than what we budgeted. And the additional amount is enough to cover the shortfall.
Gets us really
It's already
close.
there, so it's less than $1 million, I think, differential.
Yeah, for the preliminary number.
Right.
I always caveat that because
No.
we could be 10 million or 15 million off
But
projection.
that brought up a question for me, which I wasn't sure of. Are we planning to do 100% of that project before we embark on any other project? Or is it possible we do part of it and then do something else in the interim?
I think the analysis right now is being done on looking at the other projects that we, like the Station 77, and those kind of improvements. Any other major, I think, development, if we have to move Station 5, we have to kind of make some assessment of where, what that cost is gonna look like. But that's kind of in preliminary, thinking process at this point in time. But I think our priorities have been Station 1 to kind of solidify that as best we can in terms of understanding the numbers and what it's going to take. And I think once that's secured, then I think we'll be in a better position to kind of assess where there's going to be some movement going on between what assets we have and how to utilize that to move us a little bit further.
So when
The
you
fun-
say,
the
when
funds
you
are
say
ready.
state.
I was just gonna say, the funds already set aside and deducted from that amount for like the 77, the 3 projects, the
Yeah,
kitchen, the warehouse.
I wasn't talking about those
Yeah,
things. I was-
you're talking about, is there another station replacement?
Or we see a property that's $10 million that,
It doesn't contemplate that.
okay,
But the part that it did contemplate, that we did discuss in facilities, was that in the timeline of planned construction for this building, there is no other firehouse or fire station that needs to be rebuilt or is on the docket to be rebuilt in that timeframe.
okay, so
This would
when,
be completed before we would
Others
have to
would be-
face another one.
Yeah.
when we say Station 1, we're including the administrative
Administrative,
space,
yeah,
we're including the
complex.
whole
Basically,
complex.
the whole compound.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, those are really good questions, because we've talked about those things about, kind of looked on the horizon and said, are there other competing projects we have to factor in? And the good news is because 2, 4, and 6 have all recently been redone, and 3 and 5 have more than, 7 to 10 years of useful life left in them. So we're not at the end of life in any of the other buildings. 77, we're improving right now to extend that life of that with the kitchen and fitness center and such. So we're in a kind of a fortunate position of we have a nice open window to get this
Well,
project
in
done.
previous years, so, and I'm not arguing the point, in previous years, we were looking at buying the land under Station 77, we were talking about an alternative. I mean, there's other things that we.
Yeah, those
discussed.
still get discussed. It's just, and we'd have to course correct it. Yeah, and look at it again as to whether we have the means to do all of them but if we're already meeting the financial, I guess the way I look at it is, if we're already generally meeting the financial projection right now that we need for that project, pretty close by the end of this year, we're going to be adding more to the capital improvement fund in subsequent years, and this project is going to take, what's John's estimate?
For how long?
Before we'd be moving into this complex? 8 years. So over the coming time, all the money's not going out day one, and we will have new funds coming in, so I believe the funds will be available for if we take a change of direction on the property on 77, or we find a new property for, as Robert mentioned, for Station. Opportunistic, property came up, we have funds to do that based on kind of where things sit right now.
We were in good shape to even have those choices, so I'm glad about that.
Really unbelievable to have
Yeah.
that kind of, without, like I said, without having to put it back on the taxpayer. So, okay, anything else, facilities?
No,
Okay, finance.
Everything on the agenda, pretty much, I mean, which is good, so we're moving right along.
You wanna talk about the interest rate discussion a little bit, just
Um,
that number's gonna be coming down.
yeah,
About
so,
percentage
yeah, that's true, so, right after the election, everyone knows the Fed lowered the rate again, so, if we're anticipating lower, probably more normalized yield curve and, you know, interest rates coming down, and we kind of prepared for that possibility in the finance committee meeting, or finance committee, so the, you know, 5 to 5.5% short-term rates that have given us about $600,000 in interest income is not gonna be lasting that long.
Well, they've kind of dropped
It's
already,
dropped, yeah,
they've dropped
yeah.
from kind
So
of
we're gonna
5.5,
yeah,
closer to
yeah,
4.5 on
yeah.
short-term rates.
Yeah, so we're gonna
So
see a
feel
change
that.
in interest income not being at the same level as it has been over the last year or so, 6 months to a year.
Well, as we start spending the money, we won't make as much.
Won't make
either.
as much.
Yeah, but I'm only looking at the yields and the interest income based on the executive summary of our portfolio.
I just thought it was important to bring up because
The Fed.
I don't want the board to think that every month in the future, we're gonna bring in $550,000. If interest rates are dropped from 5.5% short term to 4.5, keep in mind our portfolio by the state laws and everything else, we don't get to do a lot of long-term debt. We're predominantly, we just moved it towards a 3-year duration. That's considered short-term duration. It's touching the midterm, but it's on the shorter end of the curve. So we're going to be, I just wanna make sure the board knows that our returns are gonna be prone to what you're hearing on short-term rates.
But rates went up last week, so who knows?
Well, they cratered, it was a bizarre thing, because they cratered in the 2 days after the election. And the
then the rates
principal
got
principal value, kind of cratered because rates went way up.
Right.
Yes.
And then by the end of the week, it all went back to where it was on the
Right.
Monday.
Right, so it's
So
all
it's-
over the place.
So the bond market that has traditionally been your stable
Yeah, solid,
vehicle, solid, stable, doesn't change day to day.
yeah,
That was all thrown out the window over the last couple of weeks. It was kind of a wild roller coaster ride on the bond market.
yeah,
And
and
then it
also,
all ended back on kind of a neutral
The
perspective
normal.
to what it was before the
Yeah.
election.
but the other thing is that, I think is it Beavan who, they thought that
Yeah,
the feds might cut it twice before the end of the year, so who knows, I mean, we don't know if that's gonna happen, but it has happened once in that conversation. So we'll see.
Yeah.
There's more time to do that, but you know, I don't know. So they're gonna look at the macroeconomic situation to see if it justifies another rate.
yeah, I mean, our job is not to try to forecast the rates as much
No,
as
But I mean,
have
it's gonna
transparency in
affect-
what's having an
right.
effect on us. And then making sure that our investment strategy is protecting the principal.
Right, which it is,
Which
but I
it
mean,
is.
but the fluctuations right now are not the norm,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why we wanted to bring it up to everyone that we're not gonna continue to get the higher yield that we've got.
Yeah, I think the timing of our meeting was right before the volatility.
Yeah,
So
no, but I think that,
it hadn't
yeah,
started
it
yet.
happened right
Right
after,
after the
the
meeting.
rate dropped like right
The
the
next day.
day after,
The day after
yeah,
our meeting.
yeah.
Is the way that
After
worked.
we had talked about
Yeah.
that there could be 2 more rate cuts
Right.
before the end of the year, and I'm like, okay, well, so we still have the rest of the fourth quarter for another rate cut possibly, you know, who knows, so yes, that's the discussion that we had.
Any other questions from finance committee? Okay, so moving to liaison reports, Town of Atherton, so I did attend their study session, their multi-hour study session. They had 3 topics, one had nothing to do with fire, it had to do with the refuse rates. I guess it affects us in how much we pay for our trash can service. But in station 3 would be the only place that would be affected, but I'm not gonna talk about that. The other and the primary topic they ended up spending most of the study session on was their long-term plans for El Camino Real and the study that they had done on El Camino Real to try to figure out a way for pedestrian and bike safety to add pedestrian and bike walkways, either on one side of the street, potentially both sides of the street. They talked about different plans from going from 3 lanes each direction to 4 lanes each direction. They talked about 3 lanes one direction with a wider lane for trucks. So there's lots of interesting ideas, but it's a complicated roadway. They don't completely control it either. It's considered a state highway, so it's.
The Caltrans.
It's good, Caltrans has a lot to do with it, but, and then they're also trying now to coordinate with what happens between Redwood City and Menlo Park. So that if they change the lane structure, that those don't create choke points as they merge into the other city's domain. Or that one of their ideas had the bike lane on one side of the road, and somebody pointed out that it wouldn't be terribly safe to have the bike lane in Atherton end on one side of the road, and the bike lane in Redwood City picks up on the other side of the road.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, kind of defeats the purpose of, you can picture all these bikes merging across 6 lanes of traffic to get to the other. The other thing, so it is a material safety issue. There is no good path for walking or riding bikes along a commuter rail in Atherton. So they are trying to address that. And then as it relates to fire trucks and fire truck access, they, probably because I was there, they did ask questions about with the fire trucks and lane requirements and such. And I was able to get some quick answers through text messages with Chief Coyle to just give them some general data on that. So they are paying attention to the notion that that is a major thoroughfare for fire and ambulance traffic, both, not just for Atherton, but for, ambulances coming to Stanford and other things down Okamina.
Primary response.
Yeah, so it's a primary response route, and they're cognizant of that. They also are doing, have a traffic kind of study going on as well, and they ran out of time to discuss the traffic study, so they're just schedule another study session on traffic in general. And again, the only thing they mentioned there was just some of the complications that we are familiar with as a fire district. Things like Marsh Road from Middlefield to, I guess, North Fair Oaks I think of it to the gas station, essentially where it's 1 lane each way and not a lot of room for emergency access, but nowhere to pull off or anything else. So they have a creek there, and they passed, I guess, a few years ago on a proposal to cover the creek and make it a lane, so that it'd be 2 lanes, a 3-lane road in total instead of 2-lane road. But they chose not to do it. And there was the usual town council of the, for forgetfulness of who voted for and who didn't vote for it, of the historical people. So they had a little chat about that, and they just deferred that topic to a later discussion. But it's something that as they get further into both of those studies, I was pretty confident that the town manager, George, will reach out to the district for comments about any impact on the fire access. So they're cognizant of it. And that is all I have on Atherton. East Palo Alto.
The biggest hottest thing that's going on over here now, so there's a couple other things, but the hottest thing, it has to do with parking. The city is contemplating, I was at a meeting, last week, not even the week before last, where the city is, looking at a proposal to change the structure of how to get rid of so many cars on the street. If you ever drove through the neighborhood, the garden streets and other places, there's only 1 lane that you can really go down on a good day through the neighborhoods, and they're looking to try to take those cars off the streets. The studies they conducted showed that there are other cars coming from other cities, parking overnight, and sometimes for 2 or 3 days, or longer on the streets. So it kind of, where I live in the garden, it's just ridiculous in terms of the number of cars. You have big trucks. So the meeting was around getting community input about the new proposed ordinance, and there was many residents that talked about, well, if you were gonna, people gonna have to have parking permits to park on the streets. And what the city council members did not want to do was, a couple of them expressed that we don't need to, they don't need to really, they get like no park in some areas where they would have no parking overnight at all in place. They're now willing to go to that extent. But the residents feel pretty consistent about trying to find a solution for the parking, because it really is, kids have to walk in the streets, they can't walk on the sidewalks. So that's one of the problems. My greatest fear that I brought up to the council was that, what's gonna happen when a fire truck needs to get rolled down the streets and cars that just
Are in the way.
are in the way. I mean, that's a death trap for some people. So it's they're gonna continue to have, take input. Now we've got a new council, 2 new council members, hopefully that the situation, they've looked at it a little bit closely and that the city take a strong stance on no parking. Because some houses have 6 or 7 cars, and full driveway and then the rest of them on the streets, so it becomes a real problem. So anyway,
That was the contributor of all the deaths up in the Oakland Hills was fire trucks, cars parked on the roads, the fire trucks couldn't get up the hills.
right.
This is years ago, that caused the death toll there was inability of fire trucks to get up the roads.
Right.
So it's a serious issue.
It's a serious issue.
Yeah.
Really serious. So that's it for me.
Okay.
It was also the cars trying to get out
Yeah,
of there
yeah.
to escape.
Yeah, but if you've ever driven up there, I had a relative lived way up there. There were places that an SUV could barely get by, let alone a fire truck. After the fire, they changed all that and parking on only one side and only designated areas and such. So it's East Palo Alto, having driven through there, and I know Chief Johnson's dealt with questions on that from residents as well, because one of them was one I passed on to you. So. Yeah,
It's a crazy thing. Crazy thing, the council won't take the step to make it a citywide. They want neighborhood residents to go around, but rather 60% of the neighborhood in that neighborhood similar, so they can say that they want that to happen rather than going and driving, they would make it happen. So that's it.
Okay. City of Menlo Park.
I don't have anything about the city government itself, but I can't remember, it might have been yesterday, it might have been Friday, but the creek has come up again. For people that are following that, there's a new report that's out, they're starting to have meetings, it might have been today, maybe it's tomorrow, sometime maybe this week, I can't remember which day it is. But there is a meeting where the joint powers, Creek JPA is going to present some options for what they're doing. For those of you who don't recall that, they have a plan for installing new bridges, and then they realized the calculations were wrong. So the plan in Menlo Park was thrown out because it would flood East Palo Alto, and then they kind of threw out, but maybe it's been brought back. There's where East Palo Alto and Palo Alto share a bridge at Newell. That was thrown out, but maybe brought back. So in any case, it's all heating up again, and it's now. So the options are on the table, and if you're interested, you should go to one of those public meetings.
Do they bring it up every time there's forecast of rain?
Well, they didn't mention the forecast of rain. They said that they're expecting a mild La Nina this year, which would be slightly higher rainfall, but not flooding rainfall this year. So that was discussed.
Okay. County of San Mateo, District 3 or 4?
Yes, so,
well, Mark and I were at the Veterans Day luncheon, which was actually, put on by Warren's office and created as an event to honor veterans. And we were at that time, talking to someone in his office about presenting the after action report at the Board of Supervisors meeting, so I think.
For the North Fair fire.
Yeah, sorry, the Middlefield Road Fire, North Barrow. So I think I'm hoping that we can get on in December. We were looking at November, but given the timing of things, I don't know, we may have to look at December. So Mark, I think we were gonna follow up on that, right, with Warren's staff member for the December
I'll check
meeting, for the December meeting.
Which December meeting?
Well, I don't know if they're only gonna have one in December, because they usually have two.
The county or?
Yeah, the Board of
Oh, okay.
Supervisors, sorry, yeah, the board, to present the after action report, because the fire happened in North Fair Oaks, which is in Warren's district, and he's leaving as president, and I know he's very interested in.
And it was a county building.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's fully a county facility.
County project.
But yeah, so I think if you could follow up with that, Mark, again, that would be great. Also, congratulations to, Lisa Gaucher, who is the newly elected supervisor for District 4, and who will be replacing Warren when he turns out. So I gave her congratulations, and, she's been, I think, pretty friendly with the fire district and cares about what we do, so I'm looking forward to the positive and fruitful relationship with her.
Great.
That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Rob, pre-hospital, JPA.
Did not meet.
Rob, I'm just kind of laughing because it's canceled, all these meetings are getting canceled.
When's the next theoretical one?
January,
January.
and they'll probably
I
move
don't
in
know.
January.
But that's the next one on the schedule, it's January. And I'm not asking you whether it's gonna meet or not.
I don't, like I said, I don't have the schedule.
I don't think they have this
They
schedule.
usually email us. We'll show it.
All right.
Okay,
Ad hoc committee
yeah,
reports.
so we had a meeting and we're continuing to work on the policy and hopefully, that we'll have something to show at some point.
Right, and
No, yeah, I think the plan was that we're gonna try to have another discussion on it, not
Yeah, not a
not
formal
looking for
approval.
formal approval or
Yeah.
anything, but another discussion on an updated document.
Yeah,
We've put in,
but we're working
the
on that
feedback
still,
is,
yeah.
putting the feedback from the board into the policy.
Well, and the community, mainly the board, because we did the first presentation. So
Yeah.
that'll come back
But the hope is that that'll be December meeting.
at the earliest.
Okay,
Learn out of here.
Well, I mean, it's pretty
Oh,
much
see,
done,
no,
it's just
right.
minor changes, edits and things like that, to take out redundancies and making sure there are no grammatical errors, things like that.
well, I think a lot of it too is there was an evolution of staff rebuilding the team and coming up
Yeah.
with the strategy. It wasn't just write it all down what we're doing, there was a creative process going on about what should we be doing.
There
There's
was
a lot of
tremendous
areas
staff
we didn't have,
input
we
too.
didn't have input on. So
Yeah.
it's been a good discussion topic.
With that said, I mean, we just got to have a long conversation about.
The Iowa Fall.
Yeah, it's a forward, I forgot what section it had in there about,
I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the five bonus
It's
points.
basically,
right, by voting,
yeah.
and I don't know if
community
that has.
risk reduction.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's, if you were just trying to connect, if the policy trying to connect.
I think it's kind of automatically connecting that. Heather and Chief Johnston have given a lot of input based on the community feedback that we got too. So actually, that's a good idea.
The target
John.
that they're asking for.
And Mark, should we take into consideration this community risk reduction piece for the ISO and maybe incorporate what it might be?
If they know what they're.
If it is, I mean, I don't know, it may already be in there sufficiently enough, but I don't know, since we don't have the
Yeah, it's a good question.
whole thing, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah,
You want to think of just
we'll note it
take a
for
look
next
at that?
meeting.
We'll take a look at it and see if we can't decipher the.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can talk about it the next meeting. Okay.
okay, that's it, do you have anything to add to that?
Any reports, requested directors?
Yeah, I have some.
Okay.
So, the chief kind of said a lot of things already, but I just want to thank staff for putting together the pancake breakfast, which was a lot of fun. And that haunted firehouse, I'm not kidding, but 1,700 visitors. And it was unbelievable. And so it just, like I said, almost triple the amount of visitors from last year. And even Steph Curry showed up in his custody night with his kids and their friends. So it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of work, and I think everyone had, the crew had fun putting it together too. They were excited. So I was there pretty much the whole time, so I just was there handing out stuff and just making sure that whatever they needed help with, I could be there. And then as Mark said, we had the Veterans Day lunch, which was really wonderful. The Veteran of the Year is from East Palo Alto. His name is Bob Hoover, do you know him? So he was Veteran of the Year, and so that was really great to see, you know, when someone from our fire district be Veteran of the Year is in the Fort County. Also, one last thing, there's the Cal LAFCO board, Cal LAFCO meeting or conference that I ended up going to as part of San Mateo County LAFCO, and I was elected to be the Coastal Region Special District Rep. So the Coastal Region runs from Sonoma all the way down to Ventura and as far east as San Benito, Alameda, and Contra Costa. So I'll keep you updated on whatever happens there.
Great,
Thank you.
congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that, I won't go into the details of it, but they released, last month, they released the report on what happened in Hawaii and the notification. I hope that somebody in our district is reading this thing because it's once again very damning in terms of giving people notification and so forth. They're suggesting that in many cases, there was no notification whatsoever. And there's some problems here with only half the cell towers powered. The communications that everybody's relying on for emergency communications just aren't gonna work. And rather than wait for something to happen here, we ought to kind of take the bull by the horns and say, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna get these powered? What can we do when those are down? What else? And we still don't have any emergency notifications for the whole county here, I think, or I'd say our part of the county, the whole district. And I think we seriously need that, and people die because they lack notifications in Hawaii. In any case, I think it's important reading, and I think we can learn something from it.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's good to know.
Can you,
Do you have a link?
do you have a link to it? I was gonna say, same thing.
It was released publicly, it's very available.
I'll send it.
You'll send the link
Okay,
around.
thanks.
That'd be, okay. Director Solano? Nothing. Okay. Director Jones? Nothing. Nothing further? Okay, President's report, I don't have a lot, just a reminder, we have our strategy meeting on December 10th,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so December 10th for the strategy meeting. A reminder, next meeting is our last meeting of the
The year.
year, and so we will do the elections. And Steve and I were actually just chatting about that a little bit, about how the board policy was documented for when it officially transitions. I think we moved it to upon the election essentially is the transition. So once the election completes, so that there's not this lame duck period where the person that's gonna be president the next year isn't really president for another 2 or 3 weeks or whatever the case may be.
I think I researched it at one point, I think the rules say, unless they've just changed it, the rules say as of January 1, so.
Yeah, I think we're gonna double check it. We'll make sure there's clarity on that at the next
Okay.
meeting. But I think
I agree with your
I think
point.
when we updated the board policy, we changed that. So you're
We
right, the
did.
rules historically,
The district's current rules as of March of this year is that the new president assumes the position of new president upon adjourning of the meeting at which they are elected.
which is the right way to
So
do
at midnight in.
So you don't have to like do it instantly after the vote, but you do it at the end of that meeting.
it, an adjournment of that meeting. So the current president finishes that meeting, And then that's the
next
last,
one's
for
the
that,
last
the end
meeting.
of that individual's role as president at that point in time. Okay, thanks for looking at it, Steve. So just a reminder, we will have that process at the next meeting for both president, vice president of the board. And that is all I have for the president's report. I don't see any other public comment, nor is it on the agenda. So on that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:28. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.